The alarm started screaming at 3 in the morning, ship time, and Jake Morrison knew it meant trouble. He rolled out of his bunk in the communications bay of the USS Sovereign and stumbled to his station. The ship was quiet except for the steady hum of the engines and the soft beeping of incoming signals. Jake had been monitoring deep space communications for 2 years now, and he could tell the difference between normal chatter and something serious. This was serious. The signal came from far away, so far that it took the ship's computer several minutes to decode it properly. Jake watched the alien symbols appear on his screen, slowly turning into words he could understand. The message was broken and full of static, but the meaning was clear enough. Someone was asking for help. Jake read the message 3 times before he believed what he was seeing. The signal came from a place called Kepler 442b, a planet that most humans had never heard of. The beings sending the message called themselves the Zilani, and they were in serious trouble. Pirates had attacked their research station, and people were dying. Jake grabbed his jacket and ran through the corridors of the Sovereign to find Commander Lisa Hayes. The ship was huge, with over 800 crew members, but Jake knew exactly where to find the commander at this time of night. She would be in the bridge, drinking coffee and reading reports like she always did when she could not sleep. Lisa Hayes looked up when Jake burst through the door, breathing hard from his run through the ship. She was a tall woman with gray hair and tired eyes, the kind of person who had seen too much fighting in her life. Jake handed her the decoded message and waited while she read it. Lisa read the message twice, then looked at Jake with a serious expression. She had been in the military for 20 years, and she knew what this kind of message meant. Somewhere in the galaxy, innocent people were being hurt by bad people, and they had asked humans for help. "Get me Captain Carter," Lisa said to the Night Watch officer. "Tell him we have an emergency." Captain Ben Carter arrived on the bridge 15 minutes later, still putting on his uniform. He was younger than Lisa, but had the same tired look in his eyes. He read the message while drinking coffee from a large mug that said, "World's Best Dad" on the side. Ben had joined the military to explore space and meet new alien species, not to fight wars. But he also knew that sometimes fighting was the only way to protect innocent people. The message from the Zilani made it clear that they had no weapons and no way to defend themselves against the pirates. "How far away is this planet?" Ben asked Jake. "About 6 days at maximum speed," Jake replied. "But sir, we don't know if we'll be the only ship responding to this distress call." Ben smiled for the first time that morning. He knew that other human ships would respond to the call for help, because that was what humans did. They helped people who could not help themselves, even if those people were aliens they had never met. Ben called his senior officers to the bridge for an emergency meeting. Chief Engineer Maria Santos arrived first, followed by Security Chief Tony Brooks and Dr. Susan Palmer, the ship's expert on alien species. All of them read the message and understood what it meant. Maria Santos was a small woman with strong hands and a quick mind. She had been working on starship engines for 15 years and could fix almost anything. When she read about the Zilani being attacked, her first thought was about how to make the ship's weapons work better. Tony Brooks was built like a soldier and thought like one too. He had been fighting in space for 10 years and knew how to deal with pirates. When he read the message, he started planning how to rescue the Zilani and capture the pirates alive. Dr. Susan Palmer was different from the others. She was a scientist who studied alien life forms, and she knew more about different species than anyone else on the ship. When she read about the Zilani, she immediately started thinking about how to help them recover from their terrible experience. "What do we know about these Korath pirates?" Ben asked Dr. Palmer. Susan pulled up information on her computer and shared it with the others. The Korath were a species that came from a planet with heavy gravity and little sunlight. They were strong and aggressive, and they made money by stealing things from other species and selling people as slaves. They usually attacked planets that could not fight back. "The Zilani are completely different," Susan continued. "They come from a peaceful planet where they grow food and study plants. They have never fought a war and don't even understand the concept of violence. To them, the Korath attack must be like a nightmare." Tony Brooks studied the information about the Korath and made notes about their weapons and fighting style. He knew that the pirates would not expect humans to interfere with their plans. Most alien species minded their own business and did not help strangers. Humans were different. Ben Carter made his decision quickly. He ordered the ship to change course and head for Kepler 442b at maximum speed. He also sent a message to Earth Command, telling them about the distress call and requesting permission to intervene. The answer came back 3 hours later. Earth Command told Ben that he was authorized to provide humanitarian assistance to the Zilani, and that other human ships in the area had been notified about the situation. Jake Morrison sent out a general broadcast on human military frequencies, letting every human ship in that part of the galaxy know about the Zilani distress call. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Ship after ship reported that they were changing course to help with the rescue mission. By the time the USS Sovereign was halfway to Kepler 442b, Jake had received responses from 12 different human ships. Some were military vessels like the Sovereign, but others were cargo ships, research vessels, and even private yachts. All of them were coming to help people they had never met. Ben Carter sat in his captain's chair and smiled. This was why he was proud to be human. When someone called for help, humans answered, no matter how far away they were or how dangerous the situation might be. The Korath pirates were about to learn something important about the species from Earth. They were about to learn why other aliens called humans Deathworlders. The USS Sovereign dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system with a flash of blue light and a sound like thunder. Captain Ben Carter expected to find empty space and maybe one or two other human ships responding to the distress call. Instead, he found himself staring at a small fleet of human vessels already waiting for him. Well, I'll be damned, Ben said quietly, looking at the tactical display that showed 3 other ships holding position near the system's outer planets. The heavy cruiser USS Defiance was the largest ship in the group, twice the size of the Sovereign and armed with enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Captain Rick Johnson commanded the Defiance, and Ben knew him by reputation as a man who did not back down from a fight. The fast attack ship HSV Nighthawk was smaller but deadlier, built for speed and stealth operations. Colonel Amy Foster was in command, and she had a reputation for getting into places where other people could not go and completing missions that seemed impossible. The support vessel UNSS Hope looked peaceful compared to the other ships, but Ben knew it carried medical supplies, rescue equipment, and a full squadron of fighter drones. Captain Dan Mitchell had turned his cargo ship into a floating hospital and emergency response center. Jake Morrison opened communication channels with the other ships, and soon Ben was talking to the other 3 captains on a secure video link. He had worked with Rick Johnson before, but this was his first time meeting Amy Foster and Dan Mitchell. Looks like we all got the same message, Rick Johnson said with a grin. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his face from old battles. Zilani Research Station under attack, peaceful aliens in trouble, pirates making threats. Did I miss anything? The part where we show these Korath bastards what happens when they mess with people under human protection, Amy Foster replied. She was younger than the others but had eyes that suggested she had seen plenty of combat. Her ship might be small, but Ben knew better than to underestimate her. Dan Mitchell looked different from the other captains. He wore civilian clothes instead of a military uniform, and his ship was painted white with red crosses instead of military gray. But his voice was just as determined as the others when he spoke. I've got medical supplies and emergency shelter equipment for 500 beings, Dan said. Whatever condition we find these Zilani in, we can take care of them. Ben felt proud to be working with these people. They had all received the same distress call, and they had all dropped everything to come help strangers in trouble. This was what made humans special in a galaxy full of species that mostly cared only about themselves. Lieutenant Sam Cooper, the Sovereign's intelligence officer, had been monitoring communications from the planet below. What he found made everyone angry. The Korath pirates were not just robbing the Zilani research station. They were planning to sell the peaceful aliens as slaves. The Korath commander is calling himself Warlord Thrak, Sam reported to the 4 captains. He's got 16 ships in orbit around the planet, and they're taking their time deciding which Zilani will be worth the most money in the slave markets. Amy Foster's expression turned cold when she heard this. She had spent years fighting against slavers and pirates, and she hated them more than anything else in the universe. How long do we have before they finish loading their cargo? Maybe 8 hours, Sam replied. They're arguing about which ones to take and which ones to leave behind. Apparently, the younger Zilani are considered more valuable as exotic pets. The word pets made all 4 captains angry. The idea of treating intelligent beings like animals was something that humans could not accept. Ben Carter felt his hands clench into fists, and he saw the same reaction from the others. Rick Johnson was the first to speak. "Gentlemen and lady, I think it's time we introduced ourselves to Warlord Thrak and his friends." The four ships moved deeper into the Kepler system, staying far enough apart to avoid being targeted by a single weapon, but close enough to support each other. Ben Carter had studied the tactical reports about Korath fighting methods, and he knew they preferred direct attacks with overwhelming force. Humans fought differently. Dr. Susan Palmer had spent the journey studying everything the ship's computer knew about the Korath and the Zilani. What she found confirmed what they already suspected. The Korath came from a harsh world where only the strongest survived, and they believed that violence was the answer to every problem. The Zilani were the opposite in every way. They came from a garden world where cooperation and peaceful study were the most important values. They had never fought a war because they could not imagine wanting to hurt another living being. "The Korath don't understand what they're dealing with," Susan explained to Ben as they approached the planet. "To them, the Zilani are just weak creatures that can't fight back. They've probably never encountered a species that fights to protect others instead of just protecting themselves." Commander Lisa Hayes was coordinating with the other ships to plan their approach. The Korath fleet was spread out around the planet in a loose formation that would be easy to break up if attacked properly. The pirates were confident and careless, which would work in favor of the humans. "They don't know we're coming," Lisa reported. "Our ships are too small to show up on their sensors at this distance, and they're not expecting anyone to interfere with their operation." Chief Engineer Maria Santos had been working with her team to modify the Sovereign's weapons for maximum effectiveness against Korath ships. She had studied the alien ship designs and found weaknesses that could be exploited. "Their shields are designed to stop energy weapons," Maria explained, "but they've never encountered human kinetic weapons. Our railguns should punch right through their defenses." Security Chief Tony Brooks had been planning boarding operations with his Marine team. If any of the Korath ships survived the initial attack, he wanted to be ready to capture them and rescue any Zilani who might be held prisoner. "My people are ready," Tony reported. "We've studied Korath physiology and we know how to fight them in close combat. They're strong, but they're not used to fighting in zero gravity or confined spaces." As the human fleet approached the planet, Jake Morrison intercepted a transmission from the Korath flagship to the other pirate ships. Warlord Thrak was giving orders about which Zilani to keep and which ones to get rid of. The casual way he talked about killing innocent beings made Jake feel sick. Ben Carter listened to the transmission and made his final decision. The Korath had made a mistake when they decided to attack peaceful beings who had never hurt anyone. They had made a bigger mistake when they decided to treat intelligent creatures like property. Now they were about to make the biggest mistake of all. They were about to discover why other species in the galaxy called humans Deathworlders, and why smart pirates learned to avoid human-protected space. "All ships, this is Captain Carter," Ben announced on the fleet communications channel. "We have 16 Korath vessels holding a peaceful research station hostage. They've made a critical error in judgment. Today they learn why other species call us Deathworlders." The Korath fleet hung in space around Kepler 442b like vultures around a dying animal. 16 ships of various sizes formed a loose circle around the planet, their dark hulls reflecting the pale light of the system's distant star. Warlord Thrak commanded the operation from his flagship, a massive vessel that bristled with energy weapons and carried enough firepower to destroy a city. The Korath had been raiding peaceful worlds for centuries, and they had developed their tactics through long experience. They relied on superior numbers, heavy armor, and the fear their reputation created. Most species surrendered without a fight when Korath ships appeared in their skies. Warlord Thrak stood on his command bridge, looking down at the planet below through the ship's main view screen. The Zilani research station was a small collection of white buildings surrounded by carefully tended gardens. The peaceful aliens had built their facility to study the planet's unique plant life, never imagining that someone might want to hurt them. "Status report," Thrak growled to his second-in-command, a scarred warrior named Vex who had been raiding with him for 20 years. "The cargo holds are almost full," Vex replied. "We have captured 43 Zilani adults and 17 juveniles. The younger ones will bring high prices in the Outer Rim markets." Thrak nodded with satisfaction. The Zilani were perfect slaves because they were intelligent enough to do complex work but too peaceful to cause trouble. Their soft blue fur and large eyes also made them popular as exotic pets among wealthy collectors. "What about the research data?" Thrak asked. "Our technical teams are downloading everything from their computers," Vex answered. "The Zilani have developed some interesting agricultural techniques that could be valuable to the right buyers." Thrak was about to respond when his communications officer interrupted with an urgent report. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from unknown vessels approaching the system." The main screen switched from the planet below to a tactical display showing 4 small ships entering the outer edge of the system. Thrak studied the display with growing irritation. The ships were tiny compared to his fleet, and they were moving in a formation that suggested military training. "Identify those vessels," Thrak ordered. His communications officer worked at his station for several minutes before reporting back. "Sir, the computer identifies them as human ships. 3 military vessels and 1 support craft." Thrak laughed, a harsh sound that filled the bridge. He had heard of humans, of course. They were a young species that had only been traveling in space for a few decades. Some traders called them Deathworlders because they came from a particularly dangerous planet. But Thrak had never taken such stories seriously. 4 little human ships against 16 Korath vessels, Thrak said to Vex. "This will be over quickly." The human ships continued their approach, maintaining their formation but making no aggressive moves. Thrak decided to give them a chance to retreat before he destroyed them. It would be amusing to see how the young species reacted to a show of superior force. "Open a channel to the lead human ship," Thrak commanded. Captain Ben Carter's face appeared on the main screen, and Thrak studied his opponent with interest. The human looked ordinary enough with brown hair and tired eyes. He wore a simple military uniform with captain's insignia, and his expression was calm despite facing overwhelming odds. "This is Warlord Thrak of the Korath Raider Fleet," Thrak announced. "You are entering a combat zone. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." Ben Carter listened to the threat without changing his expression. When Thrak finished speaking, Ben replied in a quiet voice that somehow carried more authority than all of Thrak's shouting. "This is Captain Ben Carter of the human vessel USS Sovereign. We have received a distress call from the Zilani Research Station requesting humanitarian assistance. We are here to provide that assistance." Thrak was surprised by the human's calm response. Most species either fled immediately or begged for mercy when faced with Korath raiders. This human seemed to think he could negotiate from a position of strength despite being outnumbered 4-1. "The Zilani are now Korath property," Thrak replied. "Their distress call is no longer relevant. Withdraw now or be destroyed." Ben Carter smiled, and something about that smile made Thrak feel uneasy. It was not the desperate smile of someone trying to hide their fear. It was the confident smile of someone who knew something that Thrak did not. "This is humanity's answer to your threats against peaceful beings under our protection," Ben said clearly. "Surrender now, or learn why Earth is classified as a death world." The transmission ended, and Thrak stared at the blank screen with growing anger. The human had actually threatened him, as if 4 small ships could challenge the might of his entire fleet. It was time to teach these Deathworlders a lesson about Korath superiority. "All ships, battle formation," Thrak ordered. "Destroy the human vessels." The Korath fleet began to move, their massive ships turning toward the approaching humans like predators sensing easy prey. Energy weapons started charging, and targeting systems locked onto the 4 small human vessels. But the humans were not behaving like prey. The USS Defiance, the largest of the human ships, suddenly accelerated directly toward the Korath flagship. Captain Rick Johnson had decided to draw the enemy's attention, while his smaller allies maneuvered into position. The HSV Nighthawk seemed to vanish from Korath sensors, its stealth systems activated as Colonel Amy Foster positioned her ship behind the enemy formation. The UNSS Hope deployed a swarm of small objects that the Korath initially dismissed as escape pods. The USS Sovereign began broadcasting strange signals that interfered with Korath communications and targeting systems. Lieutenant Sam Cooper had spent years studying alien technology, and he knew exactly how to disrupt Korath systems. Thrak watched in confusion as his carefully planned attack began to fall apart before it even started. His ships were having trouble communicating with each other. Their weapons could not lock onto targets properly. and somehow the humans had scattered in directions that made no tactical sense. "What are they doing?" Vex asked, staring at the tactical display in bewilderment. Thrak did not answer because he did not know. In all his years of raiding, he had never encountered tactics like these. The humans seemed to be breaking every rule of space combat, but somehow their chaotic movements were working. The battle began when the Korath flagship fired its main energy cannon at the USS Defiance. The powerful beam struck the human ship's shields and was absorbed harmlessly, causing no damage at all. Thrak stared in shock as his most powerful weapon failed to even scratch the enemy vessel. "Impossible," he whispered. The human response was immediate and devastating. The USS Defiance fired back with weapons that Thrak had never seen before. Instead of energy beams, solid projectiles traveling at incredible speed slammed into his flagship's armor. The kinetic impact was so powerful that it knocked crew members off their feet throughout the ship. More projectiles followed, each one punching through armor that had been designed to stop energy weapons. Thrak realized with growing horror that the humans had developed weapons specifically designed to defeat Korath defenses. The HSV Nighthawk struck from behind, its torpedoes hitting 3 Korath ships simultaneously. The explosions lit up space as alien vessels that had seemed invincible moments before were reduced to burning wreckage. The small objects deployed by the UNSS Hope turned out to be autonomous attack drones, each one programmed to target specific systems on Korath ships. They swarmed around the alien vessels like angry insects, causing chaos and destruction wherever they went. But the most devastating attack came from the USS Sovereign itself. The ship's electronic warfare systems had completely taken over Korath communications, and suddenly enemy ships were receiving false orders and targeting each other by mistake. Thrak watched his fleet tear itself apart and finally understood what the humans had been trying to tell him. Earth was classified as a death world, not because it was dangerous to visit, but because it had produced a species that had turned warfare into an art form. The space battle had been raging for 3 hours, and Warlord Thrak was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. Half of his fleet was either destroyed or badly damaged, while the 4 human ships continued to fight with a skill and ferocity that defied everything he thought he knew about warfare. Thrak's flagship shuddered under another impact from the USS Defiance's kinetic weapons. The human projectiles were moving so fast that his ship's armor could not stop them, and each hit caused massive damage to critical systems. Emergency lights flashed red throughout the bridge as crew members struggled to keep the ship operational. "Damage report," Thrak demanded, gripping his command chair as another impact nearly knocked him to the floor. "Engine power at 60%, his engineering officer reported. "Weapon systems operating at half capacity. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. Thrak looked at the tactical display and felt something he had never experienced before in all his years of raiding. He was afraid. The humans were not just defeating his fleet, they were systematically destroying it with tactics that seemed impossible. The HSV Nighthawk had appeared and disappeared from sensors so many times that Thrak's crews were jumping at shadows. Colonel Amy Foster's ship would materialize behind a Korath vessel, launch a devastating attack, then vanish again before the aliens could respond. 3 more of Thrak's ships had been reduced to floating wreckage by the human stealth attacks. Even worse, the small attack drones from the UNSS Hope had proven to be incredibly effective. The tiny machines moved too fast for Korath weapons to track, and they seemed to know exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage. 2 of his heavy cruisers were now drifting helplessly in space, their engines and weapon systems destroyed by swarms of the mechanical attackers. But the most frustrating enemy was the USS Sovereign itself. The ship's electronic warfare capabilities had turned Thrak's own communications network against him. His ships were receiving false orders, their targeting computers were malfunctioning, and some of his captains were so confused that they had accidentally fired on their own allies. "Sir," his communications officer called out urgently, "the humans are broadcasting something on all frequencies." The main screen filled with images that made Thrak's blood run cold. The humans were showing him their history, specifically their military history, and what he saw explained everything about their impossible tactics. The images showed human wars spanning thousands of years, from primitive battles with clubs and spears, to massive conflicts involving millions of soldiers and weapons of incredible destructive power. Thrak watched in horror as humans demonstrated their ability to adapt, innovate, and overcome any opponent through superior strategy and ruthless determination. One image showed humans fighting in conditions that would kill most other species instantly. Another showed their ability to turn everyday objects into deadly weapons. A third demonstrated their mastery of combined arms tactics that coordinated land, sea, air, and space forces into a single overwhelming assault. They have been perfecting warfare for their entire history, Vex said quietly, staring at the images on the screen. Every generation has found new ways to kill their enemies. Thrak realized that the humans had not just developed superior technology, they had developed a completely different approach to combat that treated warfare as both science and art. While the Korath relied on brute force and intimidation, humans had learned to fight smart. The USS Defiance demonstrated this principle perfectly. Captain Rick Johnson had positioned his ship to draw fire from multiple Korath vessels, but his shields and armor were absorbing damage that should have destroyed him. Meanwhile, his weapons were systematically targeting the weak points in Korath ship designs, causing maximum damage with each shot. Chief Engineer Maria Santos had modified the Defiance's weapons during the battle itself, adapting them to be more effective against Korath defenses. She had turned mining charges into ship killing, missiles and reprogrammed maintenance robots to become boarding attack units. The humans were literally inventing new ways to fight while the battle was happening. Colonel Amy Foster's Nighthawk struck again, this time targeting the Korath communication relay ship. The destruction of that vessel left half of Thrak's remaining fleet unable to coordinate their attacks, turning the battle into a series of individual fights that favored the more maneuverable human vessels. Captain Dan Mitchell's Hope had proven to be far more dangerous than its peaceful appearance suggested. The ship's medical facilities were being used to treat wounded Zelani, who had been rescued from damaged Korath vessels. But its attack drones continued to swarm around alien ships like mechanical predators. The turning point came when Security Chief Tony Brooks led a boarding party from the USS Sovereign onto one of the damaged Korath ships. Thrak watched in amazement as human soldiers in powered armor fought their way through his vessel's corridors, with skills that seemed almost supernatural. The humans could fight effectively in zero gravity, toxic atmospheres, and extreme temperatures that would incapacitate most Korath warriors. They moved through the ship like ghosts, appearing where they were least expected and disappearing before effective countermeasures could be organized. Within an hour, Brooks and his team had captured the entire ship and taken its crew prisoner. The human boarding tactics were unlike anything in Korath experience, combining stealth, speed, and overwhelming firepower in ways that made resistance almost impossible. "Sir," Vex said urgently, "3 more ships are requesting permission to surrender." Thrak looked at the tactical display and saw that his fleet was finished. Of his original 16 ships, 7 had been completely destroyed. 5 were so badly damaged they could barely maintain life support, and 3 had already surrendered to the humans. Only his flagship remained capable of fighting, and it was taking damage faster than his crew could repair it. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the human captain is requesting to speak with you." Ben Carter's face appeared on the screen again, and Thrak was shocked by what he saw. The human captain looked tired but not triumphant. There was no cruelty in his expression, no satisfaction at having destroyed so many enemy ships. "Warlord Thrak," Ben said calmly, "your fleet is defeated. Surrender now, and my people will provide medical assistance to your wounded and fair treatment for your prisoners." Thrak stared at the human captain in confusion. In Korath culture, victory meant the complete destruction of your enemies. The idea of showing mercy to defeated opponents was completely alien to him. "You would spare us?" Thrak asked. "We are not like you," Ben replied. "We do not kill for pleasure or profit. Surrender your ship and your remaining vessels, and this battle ends now." Thrak looked around his bridge at his surviving crew members. They were all staring at him, waiting for his decision. He could order one final attack, but he knew it would only result in the destruction of his flagship and the death of everyone aboard. For the first time in his life, Warlord Thrak of the Korath Raiders admitted defeat. "I surrender," he said quietly. The battle was over, but Thrak knew that news of this defeat would spread throughout the galaxy. Other species would learn that humans were not the weak newcomers they appeared to be. They would learn that Earth's children had brought the art of warfare to the stars, and that threatening human-protected beings was a mistake that few would survive. The age of easy Korath raids was ending, and a new era was beginning where peaceful species could call on the Deathworlders for protection. The rescue of the Zilani research station took place under the pale light of Kepler 442b's distant sun, with human medical teams working alongside alien scientists to treat both physical wounds and psychological trauma. Captain Dan Mitchell's hospital ship, UNSS Hope, had become the center of relief operations. Its white corridors filled with soft blue Zilani, who were still trying to understand what had happened to them. Dr. Susan Palmer moved carefully through the medical bay, speaking in gentle tones to the rescued aliens. The Zilani were unlike any species she had studied before, with large eyes that seemed to hold infinite sadness and voices that sounded like musical instruments. They communicated through a combination of spoken words and color changes in their fur, creating patterns that conveyed complex emotions. The young ones are responding well to treatment, Susan reported to Captain Ben Carter over the ship's communication system, but the adults are having difficulty accepting that the violence is over. Their species has no concept of warfare, so what they experienced was completely outside their understanding of how the universe works. Ben nodded as he listened to the report. The rescue operation had been successful from a military standpoint, but the real challenge was helping the Zilani recover from their ordeal. These peaceful beings had never imagined that other species might want to hurt them, and the Korath attack had shattered their basic assumptions about life in the galaxy. Security Chief Tony Brooks was supervising the processing of Korath prisoners on the USS Sovereign. The alien pirates were being held in secure cells, but they were receiving proper medical care and adequate food. Several of them seemed confused by this treatment, as if they could not understand why their human captors were not torturing or killing them. "The Korath prisoners are requesting to speak with you, Captain," Tony reported. "Apparently, they want to understand why we're treating them so well." Ben made his way down to the detention area, where he found Warlord Thrak sitting in a cell that was clean and comfortable by human standards. The Korath leader looked older than he had during the battle, as if defeat had aged him years in a matter of hours. "You wish to speak with me?" Ben asked, standing outside the cell door. Thrak looked up with eyes that held confusion and something that might have been respect. "Your species is unlike anything we have encountered," he said slowly. "You defeated us completely, but you have not harmed your prisoners. In Korath culture, defeated enemies are either killed or enslaved. Why do you show us mercy?" Ben considered the question carefully before answering. "Because we judge beings by their actions, not by their species. You chose to attack innocent people and sell them as slaves. That was wrong and we stopped you, but that does not mean we have the right to torture or kill you in return." Thrak was quiet for a long moment, clearly struggling to understand the human concept of proportional justice. "What will happen to us now?" "You will be transported to a neutral world where you will stand trial for your crimes," Ben replied. "If you are found guilty, you will serve time in prison. But you will be treated according to galactic standards of justice, not Korath standards of revenge." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from Jake Morrison in the communications bay. "Captain, you need to hear this. We're receiving transmissions from all over the galaxy." Ben made his way to the communications center, where Jake had multiple channels open on his screens. The young officer looked excited and slightly overwhelmed by what he was monitoring. "Sir, news of our battle with the Korath is spreading through subspace communication networks faster than we can track it," Jake reported. "We're getting messages from dozens of different species and they all want to know the same thing." "Which is what?" Ben asked. "They want to know if humans will help them too." Ben looked at the messages scrolling across Jake's screens and felt a mixture of pride and concern. The requests were coming from peaceful species throughout the galaxy, beings who had been threatened by pirates, slavers, and aggressive neighbors. Word had spread that humans would fight to protect innocent aliens, and suddenly everyone wanted human protection. Commander Lisa Hayes joined them in the communication bay, carrying a report from Earth Command. "I've just received new orders from headquarters," she announced. "The Galactic Council has formally recognized our right to protect client species, and 3 different governments have requested mutual defense agreements." The implications were staggering. In a single day, humanity had gone from being a minor player in galactic politics to being recognized as a major military power. The defeat of the Korath raiders had demonstrated human capabilities to species across the galaxy, and the political landscape was already changing in response. Colonel Amy Foster's Nighthawk had been conducting reconnaissance missions throughout the system, mapping Korath bases and gathering intelligence about their operations. What she found painted a picture of an extensive criminal network that had been operating with impunity for decades. The Korath have been running slave markets, protection rackets, and piracy operations across 12 different star systems, Amy reported during the daily briefing. Our attack on their fleet has disrupted their entire organization. Captain Rick Johnson's Defiance had been escorting captured Korath vessels to a secure facility, but his crew had also been monitoring communications from other pirate groups. The news was encouraging from a law enforcement perspective. Pirate activity in this entire sector has dropped by 70%, Rick announced. Word has gotten out that humans will respond to attacks on peaceful species, and most of the criminal organizations are avoiding human-protected space. Dr. Susan Palmer had been working with Zilani scientists to establish formal diplomatic relations between their species and humanity. The process was complicated by the fact that the Zilani had no concept of military alliances, but they were eager to learn more about their rescuers. The Zilani want to understand how we knew to help them, Susan explained. They've never heard of a species that would travel across the galaxy to help strangers. In their worldview, this kind of altruistic behavior is so rare as to be almost mythical. Chief Engineer Maria Santos had been analyzing the wreckage of destroyed Korath ships, looking for technology that might be useful or dangerous. What she found was mostly confirmation of what they already knew about alien engineering. But one discovery was particularly interesting. The Korath have been using weapons and shield technology from at least 6 different species, Maria reported. They're not just pirates, they're technology scavengers. Every species they defeat contributes to their military capabilities. The strategic implications were clear. The Korath had been growing stronger with each successful raid, accumulating both resources and technology from their victims. If the human fleet had not intervened, they would eventually have become powerful enough to threaten entire civilizations. Lieutenant Sam Cooper had been monitoring galactic communication networks, tracking how news of the battle was spreading and what other species were saying about humanity. The results were fascinating and somewhat concerning. We're being called everything from galactic peacekeepers to the new apex predators, Sam reported. Some species are grateful for our intervention, but others are worried about human military expansion. Ben Carter sat in his captain's chair and considered the reports from his officers. The rescue of the Zilani had been successful, but it had also changed humanity's position in the galaxy permanently. Other species now knew that humans would fight to protect the innocent, but they were also aware that human military capabilities were far more advanced than anyone had realized. Jake Morrison interrupted Ben's thoughts with an urgent communication from Earth Command. Captain, I'm receiving a priority message from Admiral Johnson at Fleet Headquarters. The Admiral's face appeared on the main screen, and Ben could see both pride and concern in the older man's expression. Captain Carter, congratulations on a successful rescue operation. However, I need to inform you that your actions have had galaxy-wide repercussions. Yes, sir, Ben replied. We're aware that news of the battle has spread. The Galactic Council has called an emergency session to discuss the human question, the Admiral continued. Some species are requesting human protection, while others are demanding restrictions on human military activities. You and your crew are being recalled to Earth for debriefing and to help develop new policies for human-alien relations. Ben nodded, understanding the implications. The age of human exploration and peaceful contact with alien species was ending, replaced by an era where humanity would be seen as both protector and potential threat. One more thing, Captain, the Admiral added. The President wanted me to tell you that the entire human population is proud of what you and your crews accomplished. You've shown the galaxy what humanity stands for. As the USS Sovereign prepared to leave the Kepler system, Ben Carter made one final log entry. Today we demonstrated that our species' greatest strength isn't our weapons or our technology. It's our absolute refusal to stand by while others suffer. That's what makes us Deathworlders. The message would spread across the galaxy along with news of the battle, letting every species know that Earth's children were unlike anything the universe had seen before.